Welcome, NFL football fans. It's that time again. Time for another edition of NFL Football Talk. This is an Inside Sports production. I'm your host, Charles E. Smith Jr. 2 weeks of NFL football in the books, so we're going to go ahead and break things down, figure out what happened there in week 2, what went right, what went wrong, and what just went crazy. So before we start, I got to go ahead and introduce my co-host. Many of you follow him on Twitter at Chris L Sports, and if you are not following him, you should be. Some great nuggets of wisdom there. So here he is from an undisclosed location. I should say undisclosed air-conditioned location. From what I understand, it's actually so cool where he is that he has to sip hot tea while he's doing this show. Meanwhile, myself, I'm in here in the studio with no air conditioning, sweating it out. But you know what? I'm not complaining because it's an honor and a privilege to work with none other than Chris Lardieri. Chris, what's happening?
Charles, great to be back. As always, you are not far off. I'm sitting under a nice air-conditioned vent, and while that may sound good to you, today is the first day of fall, and I really don't want to be running my air conditioning. But I digress, and Charles, we're in 2 weeks now into the NFL season, and I have no idea what's going on. There are a bunch of 0-2 teams and 2-0 teams that no one thought would be in this place. Just as confused as anyone. How about you?
Yeah, exactly. And then, week 2 was a rough week for quarterbacks. I mean, Jay Cutler throws an interception, which we all know he's going to do from time to time, but then injures his hamstring chasing the ball down, so he's going to be out at least 2 weeks. Tony Romo, broken collarbone. He's going to be out. Earliest he can return is November 22nd game, which is against the Miami Dolphins. And Matt Stafford of the Detroit Lions, questionable for this week with a bruised, it looks like sternum all over. And then we know of the saga of Drew Brees, the bruised rotator cuff. He might miss this week too. And in fact, I think he should sit out. He's a tough dude. But I think this is one of those where the coach should probably take him and sit him down. He didn't throw well last week. And really, you look at him getting up there in age, it's probably time for Drew to sit one out, get completely healthy back to whatever he's going to be, and go ahead and lead the Saints to this 4-12 season that they're going to go on.
Absolutely. It's kind of sad in a way.
Yeah.
It looks like the Peyton Breeze era is coming to an abrupt end, although the signs were there last year. You forgot one name on that list. Eli Manning has lost his mind, so can we put him on the injury report?
Yeah, I think so. But you know what? Speaking of losing their mind, what's going on in Philadelphia? And that's a team where they were the odds-on favorite to win the NFC East. And here they are, all of a sudden, they get DeMarco Murray. The first week, 8 carries for 9 yards. But then last week, 13 carries for 2 net yards in the game. How is that even possible? The team, as a team, they rushed for 7 yards last week. And, of course, they lost again. They're one of the 0-2 teams. So, if you were, having a few tequila shots with Chip Kelly, what would you tell him?
Chip, either start running the ball, or maybe you need to realize that Sam Bradford's not the answer. Because, look, Dallas has a good defense. I know Atlanta has an improved defense, but neither of those are the 2000 Ravens. Try and run the ball. And I know their offensive line has some holes in it, but I don't think they're as bad as the Colts, let's say. Why are you abandoning the run so soon? And I'm sorry, I don't know if it's you, but Bradford looks like a deer in the headlights out there. He looks like he hasn't played in an NFL game before, or maybe in a number of years. When that guy gets blitzed, watch out. So basically, teams are just daring the Eagles to run, so it's not all DeMarco Murray's fault. They stack the line, and Bradford's not going to beat you. I mean, dare I say they switch to Sanchez? I'm not sure. And then this is a winnable NFC East now with Romo and Bryant out for a substantial point of the season. The Giants appear to have already gone into chaos mode, and the Redskins, while they're 1-1, I don't think they're an NFC East winning team unless we have a repeat of what happened in the South last year. But really mind-boggling because this is their division to win.
That's true, and I think NFC East, when we look at the turmoil, if the Cowboys can somehow pull off one of their patented 8-8 seasons, like they did, I think, for 3 or 4 years in a row before last season, I think that'll be enough to get the division this year. I think 8-8 will win that. And the Giants, if we look at one thing, is from what I understand, Coughlin, they're talking about him possibly being on the hot seat. So you know what that means. The Giants are probably going to win 3 out of the next 4 games.
Normally I'd agree with you, but there is such a lack of talent on this defense. I mean, when you look at it, the best defensive player is still not playing, Jason Pierre-Paul. And I know Steve Spagnuolo's got a new scheme that's hard to adjust to, but How the heck do you leave Julio Jones on single coverage late in the game? I don't get it. I'd like to think that, but I'm starting to think this is the end of the run for the Coughlin era in New York for many reasons.
Yeah, it could be. But then again, you look at those first two games, the Giants did have at least a 10-point lead in both of those games before losing them. But let's go to another team in blue, and in the AFC, same type of problem as the Eagles we just talked about, and that's the Colts. You know, the Colts, and you look at them, another team that picked up the high-profile running back. Just like the Eagles got DeMarco Murray, the Colts got Frank Gore. That was supposed to solve the one problem they had there, which was no running game. Now, they can't run it. Andrew Luck can't throw it, and they're 0-2 now. So if you were sitting down having, tossing back a few brews with Chuck Pagano, who should have signed that contract extension in the offseason, what would you tell him?
I'd tell him, Chuck, the good news is you play in the AFC South, and there's hope for you. You get to play the Tennessees and Jacksonville's of the world, and now apparently you can lump the Texans in with that mediocre group.
Yeah.
That said, there is so much chaos with that organization, from Jim Irsay to the general manager Gregson to Pagano not signing. I heard a good analogy today where this is kind of reminiscent of Harbaugh fighting with Balky last year with the 49ers. That's a little different in that Harbaugh is a bit of a hothead and some may say an egomaniac, but part of me wonders if Pagano not signed his extension because he knows that the team really is Andrew Luck, T.Y. Hilton, and not much else, nothing on the defensive side of the ball apparently, and poor Luck with his offensive line. I mean, you can blame him for a lot of those turnovers, but the guy's constantly pressured or hit, and that's no way to play quarterback in the NFL. So, Chuck, you may have a mediocre 9-7 season, but that might be good enough to get you into the big show.
Yeah, when you look at that division, Tennessee, Houston, Jacksonville, and the Colts, who knows? Maybe Jacksonville goes 8-8 and wins that division or something. Maybe Marcus Mariota and his Tennessee Titans, maybe they win it. I don't think Houston can because they just, they just don't have the quarterback play. But we'll see.
Yeah, wishful thinking. We'll see what happens there. But I must say, at least for a change, the Titans and Jaguars have quarterbacks.
Yep. And, of course, my AFC East, the Dolphins losing to Jacksonville. And Ryan Tannehill, I've said all along, even though he's more athletic, but I see Eli Manning-type qualities in him and lack thereof, both sides, the good and the bad. It's like he'll follow up some amazing play with kind of a head-scratcher of excuse me, did you just mentally check out of the game or what type of a thing? So, what would you say to Dolphins fans out there?
What I would say is, being a Giants fan, I guess if you put up with the brain farts long enough, he's bound to make some spectacular plays. But that's not a given. I mean, Eli made 2 tremendous throws in 2 Super Bowls. But even still, years later, he's still making these just gross mental errors, is what I call them. And I think that's a great analogy with Tannehill. I think you got the defense and the running game to control the ball, and as long as you can put him in situations where he doesn't have to win you the game, a la Alex Smith, maybe that could be some cause for optimism. But, the way the Jets are playing in their defense, I don't know, Charles, and the Bills, even though they got rocked by the Patriots, they've got a great defense. So Tannehill's going to face an uphill battle in this division.
The Dolphins at 1-1, and the Jets, with the Lorax at quarterback there, playing some good ball, and just they're getting it done. And Darrelle Revis having just a career game against the Colts with 1 interception and 2 fumble recoveries. Oh, holy cow! I don't know what's going on there, but the Jets, and that was a team again. Everyone kind of said, oh, they're going to finish at the bottom, and still we're only 2 games in, so they might. But showing a lot of character and just a lot of fight. That's what I like to see out of the Jets, though.
Yeah, I've always liked Todd Bowles as a coach. He did a great job with the defense in Arizona. We all know they were stacked on the defensive side of the ball, but really when you look at it, the turning point for this team may have been a punch breaking Geno Smith's jaw. You think that's unified the locker room and also gotten the better quarterback to play? It's kind of ironic.
That's true. And speaking of better defensive play, back over to the NFC, all of everyone in Seattle, just a collective sigh of relief. Kam Chancellor has ended his holdout, and he will be available to play this weekend. So Chancellor's back, and he would get to play against Chicago, which I believe will be starting Jimmy Clausen at quarterback this week. So that's a good get-right game for the Seattle Seahawks, who are now 0-2, and they got soundly, they got handled by Green Bay last week.
Yeah, they sure did, and I know it's tough to play in Lambeau, but has anyone seen Jimmy Graham? Did he even make it to Lambeau? The guy was invisible. And, same thing. Once you stack the line to neutralize Marshawn Lynch, as great as Russell Wilson is, who's he going to throw to? They really don't have the deep threat, and they were hoping Graham would be that threat, but clearly not. So they've got to work out the kinks there. And then with Chancellor coming back, I liken it to this will be his first preseason game against the Boston-led Bears. What do you think, Charles?
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. So, but I think he'll have no problem fitting in. And also, remember, he is a safety, so not quite as many timing issues as he might have as a linebacker or playing up at line or playing corner. So I think he'll fit back in, and safeties kind of get to roam a little bit there. So I think Chancellor's going to come back. I think he's more of an emotional leader than really a lot of us maybe gave him credit for. But I think that should solidify that Seattle defense, and I look for them to go ahead and get everything back on track, get right, and be able to finish the season strong here. Yeah,
that said, the Arizona Cardinals, one of the 2-0 teams, they look like they came to play again this year.
Well, Carson Palmer, that's the whole key to it. They were on their way last year, and then Palmer got injured, so the defense had to do everything. Now Palmer's healthy. They're hitting on all 8 cylinders. Or you know what? It's more like a Ferrari, so they're hitting on all 12 cylinders right now. So we'll see. Maybe this is the year the Cardinals, they get back to another, do we dare speak that word? Do we dare associate, do we say Cardinals and Super Bowl in the same sentence? Can we do that?
No, we can't, because the NFL would crack down on us. So we could say Cardinals in Big Game 50.
And, right, NFL championship. Yeah, so the other thing we were talking about, since we're on redheaded quarterbacks right now, not redheaded stepchildren, but redheaded quarterbacks, how about Andy Dalton? And we talked about this. Regular season Andy Dalton getting it done against the San Diego Chargers last weekend.
Every time I doubt the red-headed rocket or rifle, whatever his nickname is, he comes through. I'm sure the Chargers secondary also played a key role in helping him out there, because clearly they didn't want to defend A.J. Green last week. But good for Andy. It's kind of like what the late George Steinbrenner said about Dave Winfield once, and he called him Mr. May. I guess we can call Andy Dalton through September.
Yeah, there you go. Mr. Regular Season. We'll call him that. Let's just call him Mr. Regular Season and leave it at that. But we're going to find out this weekend when they have that big game against the Baltimore Ravens. So that pretty much wraps everything up here. So remember, catch our picks segment where we'll be picking the games of Week 3 here. You can find that wherever you're watching this, if it's on Vimeo or on YouTube, wherever you catch the show. Remember that every single week, 2 shows. We wrap up the week before, and then we preview the next week. So before we go ahead and sign off here, Mr. Lardieri, any final thoughts on the week, the quarterback crises, anything else going on, the fall of Detroit, anything for the fans?
Yeah, old habits again are coming back into play, namely Andy Reid and his play calling with the Kansas City Chiefs. The guy runs the ball when he shouldn't, and Jamal Charles fumbles and costs him the game.
That was terrible.
The guy runs in the red zone too much when he shouldn't, throws when he shouldn't, calls trick plays in the red zone. As rough as it is to be a New York Giants fan right now, that as atrocious as the play calling was against the Cowboys, I sat there on Thursday night and watched Andy Reid, and I thank my lucky stars I wasn't a Chiefs fan. The guy is a smart coach. I think players like playing for him.
Yeah.
But there's just something about him. He blacks out as soon as that ball's within the 20-yard line or closer, where his play calling goes absolutely haywire, and completely blew a winnable game at home in Arrowhead against a division rival. Peyton comes back, and from the time they scored the tying touchdown until I got downstairs, my wife informed me the game was over and the Broncos won, and I thought she was seeing things. But no, Andy Reid was involved. I should have known better.
Yep, and then you had of course, the Raiders. You got to give them credit. Give credit where it's due. The Raiders beating Baltimore and also beating them with a late touchdown drive and sending Baltimore to 0-2. The Raiders 1-1 and in the thick of the race, I guess you could say, after 2 weeks. That's all you need to be in the thick of it.
Yeah, I don't play fantasy anymore, but I advised someone right before the season started, it might be worth having David Carr on your bench. And no, we're only in 2 games, but I like what I see so far in the sophomore season.
Yep. There you go. Okay, everybody, that kind of wraps it up. So remember, I'm Charles E. Smith Jr. You can follow me on Twitter at The Inside Sports. Follow Mr. Lardieri on Twitter at Chris L. Sports. And that's about it. Remember, NFL Football Talk's an Inside Sports production, and we'll see everybody next week.